The old house creaked around Sarah, a constant reminder of how much work lay ahead and how little help she had. Every floorboard groaned a different tune, a symphony of decay that echoed her own tired heart. Sarah was a single mom, and lately, the world felt like a heavy blanket she couldn't shake off. Her days were a blur of early mornings, school runs, making meals, and working long shifts at the local diner. Evenings brought a new set of chores: homework, laundry, and trying to make sure her little one, Lily, felt loved and secure despite their struggles. Money was tight, a knot in her stomach that never loosened. The bills piled up like silent accusations on the kitchen counter. Sometimes she'd stare at them, counting pennies in her head, wondering if she'd ever catch a break. There were days she skipped lunch just to make sure Lily had a treat, or to put a little extra toward the electric bill. It wasn't just the money, though. It was the quiet that settled in after Lily was asleep, the vast, empty space in the house that felt even bigger in her heart. Friends were busy with their own lives, and Sarah often felt like she was on an island, waving to ships that never quite saw her. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. The loneliness was a dull ache that never truly went away. She missed having someone to share the small victories with, someone to lean on when the weight of everything became too much. A leaky faucet, a flat tire, a school project that needed extra help. Each challenge felt bigger when faced alone. She tried to stay strong, to put on a brave face for Lily. But inside, Sarah often felt like a stretched rubber band about to snap. One Saturday, the rain poured outside, drumming a slow, sad rhythm on the roof. Lily was at a friend's house, a rare moment of peace that Sarah usually cherished. Today, however, the quiet felt heavier than usual. She looked around her small living room, noticing the dust motes dancing in the weak light filtering through the window. The house, old and full of character, also felt full of forgotten corners and neglected tasks. She sighed, pushing herself up from the worn sofa. There was no point sitting around feeling sorry for herself. If she wanted things to get better, she had to make them better, one small step at a time. Maybe she could tackle the basement. It had been years since she'd really gone through the boxes down there, boxes left by the previous owners. It was a chore she'd put off for ages, a dark, dusty abyss she usually avoided. But today, the thought of sorting through old forgotten things seemed less daunting than the silent house. It was a chance to move, to do something, anything, to shake off the gloom. With a sigh, Sarah pulled on an old pair of gardening gloves and headed for the basement door. The air down, there was cool and smelled faintly of damp earth and forgotten things. A single bare bulb, hanging from the ceiling, cast weak shadows across piles of boxes and forgotten furniture. Cobwebs, thick and silvery, stretched between shelves like ancient lace. Sarah grabbed a broom and started swatting at the webs, sending dusty spiders scurrying. She moved from one side of the room to the other, tidying as she went, deciding what to keep, what to throw away, and what to donate. She cleared off an old wooden workbench first, uncovering rusty tools and dried paint cans. Then she moved to a stack of cardboard boxes, marked with faded, messy handwriting. Most of them held old holiday decorations or forgotten kitchen gadgets. But then, tucked away at the very bottom of a box marked MISC Papers, she found something different. It was a small, leather-bound book, no bigger than her hand, with a faded gold clasp. The leather was soft and worn smooth in places, telling tales of many years and many hands. Sarah carefully picked it up, brushing away a layer of dust. It felt old, important. Her fingers traced the faint patterns on the cover. There was no title, no name, just the simple, elegant design of the leather. Her heart gave a little flutter of excitement, a feeling she hadn't had in a long time. This wasn't a bill or another chore. This was a mystery. She carried it upstairs, out of the damp basement and into the brighter light of her living room. Sitting down on her worn sofa, she gently undid the clasp. It clicked open with a soft sound, like a tiny secret being unlocked. The pages inside were yellowed with age, thin and delicate. The handwriting was neat and flowing, written in dark brown ink that had faded to sepia over time. A wave of curiosity washed over Sarah. Who wrote this? Why was it hidden in her basement? Was it a journal, a collection of poems, or something else entirely? She felt a strange pull, a desire to know the story behind this forgotten book. It felt like holding a piece of someone else's life, a whisper from the past. She turned to the first page, her eyes eagerly scanning the elegant script. The date at the top read, June 12th, 1948. So it was truly old. Sarah imagined a young woman, perhaps sitting at a desk by a window, carefully writing down her thoughts. She felt a connection already, a shared moment across many decades. The words began to form a picture in her mind. The writer talked about the weather, a new dress, and a small town. Sarah realized she was holding a diary, a real, honest-to-goodness diary, full of someone's private thoughts and feelings. A little thrill ran through her. This was much more interesting than dusty old decorations. She started to read, slowly at first, wanting to understand every word. The old language, the different way of life, it all drew her in. She was curious about who this person was, what their life was like, and what secrets these delicate pages held. For a moment, her own worries about bills and loneliness faded away, replaced by the quiet excitement of discovery. She felt like an explorer, uncovering a hidden treasure right in her own home. This diary promised a story, and Sarah was ready to listen. Sarah settled deeper into the sofa, the diary resting gently in her hands. The first few entries were like stepping back in time to a simpler world. The writer, whose name hadn't been revealed yet, wrote about small, everyday things that made Sarah smile. She described the weather, often commenting on how warm the sun felt or how a sudden rain shower had cleared the air. Sarah could almost feel the gentle breeze the writer spoke of, or see the puddles sparkling after a storm. The diary entries detailed tasks that seemed quaint to Sarah now. The writer mentioned baking bread from scratch, churning butter, and mending clothes by hand. She wrote about tending a small garden, describing the joy of seeing tiny green shoots push through the soil. "The first tomato is almost ripe," one entry exclaimed, filled with a simple happiness that was clear to Sarah. Another time, the writer talked about picking fresh berries from bushes behind the house and making jam. A sweet task that filled the kitchen with wonderful smells. Sarah found herself imagining the scenes described. She pictured the writer hanging laundry on a line in the backyard, the sheets flapping like white flags in the breeze. She read about neighbors visiting, sharing cups of tea and gossip over fences. There was a mention of a town picnic, where everyone brought a dish to share and children played games until dusk. These were snapshots of a community that felt very different from Sarah's often isolated life. The writer also spoke of simple pleasures, reading a book by lamplight, listening to the radio, or taking a quiet walk down a country lane. There were no mentions of frantic commutes, endless bills, or the constant hum of screens. It was a life lived at a slower, more thoughtful pace. Sarah couldn't help but feel a pang of longing for such simplicity, even as she recognized the hard work that must have been involved. A small smile touched Sarah's lips. The diary wasn't filled with dramatic events or grand adventures, at least not yet. Instead, it was a gentle record of ordinary days, made special by the care the writer took to describe them. It was comforting, in a way, to read about a life where happiness was found in fresh bread and ripening tomatoes. It reminded Sarah that joy could be found in the little things, a lesson she sometimes forgot in her own busy, stressful life. The diary was becoming a quiet friend, sharing stories of a past that felt both distant and strangely familiar. She turned the page, eager to learn more about this woman from long ago. As Sarah continued to turn the fragile pages, the writer's voice became clearer, more distinct. The simple entries about daily chores and community events slowly began to weave a richer story. It wasn't long before Sarah found the name she had been looking for. Tucked into an entry describing a visit from a cousin, the writer signed off with, "Your loving Emily." Emily. The name felt right somehow. Sarah repeated it softly. Emily. It was a sweet, old-fashioned name that fit the gentle tone of the diary. A few pages later, Emily wrote about her little house, describing the garden in the backyard, the big oak tree by the side fence, and the way the morning sun hit the kitchen window. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The details were too specific, too familiar. The big oak tree, the sunny kitchen window. They were all exactly as they were in Sarah's own home. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine, a mix of surprise and wonder. This wasn't just a diary. It was the diary. Emily had lived in this very house years and years ago. Sarah looked up from the diary, glancing around her living room. The same walls, the same windows, perhaps even some of the same floorboards that Emily had walked on. The idea was amazing, almost magical. Suddenly, the old house felt different. It wasn't just a place Sarah lived in. It was a place with a past, a history that now felt deeply personal. She imagined Emily going about her day in these rooms, just as Sarah did. Emily might have sat by the same window, perhaps even on a similar sofa, writing her thoughts as the sun set. This discovery made the diary even more special. It wasn't just a glimpse into a forgotten time. It was a connection to the very foundations of her home. Sarah felt a strange sense of companionship, as if Emily, through her words, was still a part of the house, a quiet presence watching over it. Reading Emily's words now felt like listening to a ghost, whisper secrets from the past. Sarah learned that Emily was a young woman, full of dreams and a gentle spirit. She described her hopes for the future, her simple joys, and sometimes her quiet worries. Sarah felt herself drawn deeper into Emily's world, no longer just a reader, but almost a friend. She was eager to uncover more about Emily's life, especially now that she knew their lives were linked by the very walls around them. The diary had stopped being just an old book. It had become a living bridge between two women, separated by time, but connected by the same home. The connection to Emily and the shared history of the house made Sarah even more eager to read on. As the entries progressed, Emily's words began to open up, sharing not just her daily life, but the deeper feelings of her young heart. Sarah learned about Emily's dreams. Emily longed for a life filled with joy, a loving family, and a home where laughter echoed in the halls. She wrote about wanting to travel, even just to the next big city, to see what the world held beyond her small town. These dreams, simple yet heartfelt, made Sarah feel a pang of understanding. She, too, had once dreamed of a different life, before the realities of single motherhood had settled in. Emily also wrote about her worries. She worried about her aging parents, about the crops failing in a bad season, and about what the future held for her as a young woman without a husband. These worries were different from Sarah's own, but the feeling of anxiety, of carrying heavy thoughts, was exactly the same. Sarah could almost hear Emily's sigh through the delicate pages, a quiet echo of her own sighs. Then, a new theme started to appear in the diary, written in a slightly more hurried, excited hand. Emily began to mention a kind man from town. At first, it was just small comments. "Saw Mr. Thomas today. He smiled at me." Or, "Mr. Thomas helped me carry my baskets from the market. Such a gentleman." Slowly, these mentions grew into something more. Emily's entries became filled with shy confessions of a secret love. She wrote about how his eyes twinkled when he laughed, how his strong hands were gentle, and how his voice made her heart flutter. Sarah found herself smiling, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It was a classic love story, unfolding page by page. Emily worried if he felt the same, if he even noticed her beyond a friendly wave. She wrote about stealing glances at him in church, hoping he might look her way. The innocence and sweetness of her feelings were clear. Sarah remembered her own first crushes, the nervous excitement, the hope. It felt good to read about love, even someone else's from long ago. It was a reminder of a feeling she hadn't felt in a very long time. Emily carefully kept this love a secret, only daring to write it down in the private pages of her diary. She worried about what her parents would say, or what people in the small town might think. But her longing was clear. She dreamed of a future with him, a life filled with shared moments and quiet happiness. Sarah was completely hooked, eager to see if Emily's secret love would blossom into something real. She turned the page, holding her breath, hoping for a happy ending for Emily and her kind Mr. Thomas. The pages of Emily's diary felt warm in Sarah's hands, almost as if they held a living breath. As she read about Emily's dreams for a loving family and her quiet worries about the future, a deep connection began to grow between the two women, separated by decades but united by shared human feelings. Sarah understood Emily's hopes for a joyful life, the longing for a partner, and the simple desire for happiness. Emily's dreams of a home filled with laughter echoed Sarah's own deepest wishes for Lily and herself. It was a comfort to know that, even long ago, women shared these same basic desires. And then there were the struggles. Emily's worries about her parents and the hard work of farm life might be different from Sarah's bills and the demands of being a single mom. But the feeling of worry was universal. Sarah recognized the heavy weight of responsibility in Emily's words, the constant concern for those she loved, and the quiet fear of what tomorrow might bring. Emily's entries sometimes spoke of feeling overwhelmed, of days that felt too long and tasks that felt too big. Sarah nodded silently as she read, a lump forming in her throat. She knew that feeling all too well. It was the feeling of being stretched thin, of trying to be everything to everyone, and sometimes feeling like she was failing. The loneliness Emily sometimes expressed, even in a close-knit community, also struck a chord with Sarah. Emily wrote about moments of quiet reflection, wishing for someone to share her deepest thoughts with, someone who truly understood her heart. Sarah, who often felt isolated despite living in a bustling modern world, felt a rush of empathy. Emily, through her diary, was no longer just a character from the past. She was a kindred spirit, a friend who understood the unspoken burdens of a woman's heart. This connection made Sarah feel less alone. Here was a woman, from the same house, from a different time, who felt many of the same things she did. It was a strange comfort, knowing that human experiences, the good and the hard, stretched across generations. Emily's words offered a quiet validation, a silent nod that said, "I understand." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of belonging that she hadn't realized she was missing until now. She was no longer just reading a story. She was sharing a journey, understanding Emily's heart as if it were her own. Sarah was lost in Emily's world, tracing the gentle rise and fall of her hopes and dreams, the quiet fears and the sweet, secret love for Mr. Thomas. She was eager to see how their love story unfolded, how Emily's life would find its happy ending. She turned page after page, the narrative flowing smoothly, until her fingers brushed against a page numbered 47. The handwriting on this page was different. It wasn't the neat, flowing script that usually filled the diary. Instead, it was rushed, almost frantic, as if Emily had written it quickly, her hand shaking. The ink was darker, smudged in places, as if tears might have fallen onto the page as she wrote. A sense of unease settled over Sarah. This wasn't going to be a happy entry. Sarah took a deep breath and began to read. The date at the top of page 47 was much later than the previous entry, a gap of several months. The usual pleasantries about the weather or daily tasks were gone. In their place, Emily poured out a heart-wrenching secret. "Oh, my dear diary," Emily began. "I scarcely know how to write this. My hand trembles so. A great change has come, a secret too big to hold inside any longer." Sarah's eyes widened, her own heart starting to beat a little faster. Emily continued, "I am going to have a baby." Sarah gasped softly. A baby. A wave of emotions washed over her. Surprise, then a flicker of joy for Emily. But the frantic handwriting and the dark tone of the entry told her this was not a joyous announcement. She read on, her eyes scanning the words, dread building in her chest. "But the father, my beloved Mr. Thomas, he has gone," Emily wrote, her words almost smeared with despair. "He left. He took work in another town, far away, and says he will not return. He says he cannot face this, cannot be a father." Sarah's breath hitched. Her stomach dropped. The happy romance she had been so invested in had crashed, shattered into a million pieces. Mr. Thomas, the kind gentleman, the man whose twinkling eyes Emily adored, had abandoned her. And not just her, but their unborn child. The betrayal, the sudden shift from hope to utter despair, was stark. The words on page 47 hit Sarah with a physical force. Emily was going to be a single mother, just like her. But Emily lived in a time when being an unmarried mother was a far greater shame, a heavy burden that few could understand or accept. The implications of Emily's secret, the depth of her pain and fear, became terribly clear. Sarah felt a profound sadness for Emily, a sharp ache in her own chest. This secret revealed on page 47 was not just Emily's. It was a shared wound, an echoing pain that crossed the decades. The words on page 47 continued to unfold Emily's pain, each sentence a fresh stab to Sarah's heart. Emily described in stark detail the terror that gripped her. "I am so scared, dear diary," she wrote, the ink looking even darker now, as if soaked in sorrow. "My parents, they will be so disappointed. What will the townspeople say? A child without a father, a shame upon our house." Sarah knew that in Emily's time, this was not just a personal problem, but a public disgrace that could ruin a woman's life. The weight of that judgment, even from so long ago, felt heavy in the air. Emily also wrote about feeling utterly alone. "He is gone, and I have no one to speak of this to," she confided in the pages. "My heart aches for a kind word, a gentle hand, but I must bear this burden by myself." Sarah felt a deep pang of empathy. She knew that feeling of having a secret burden, of facing a mountain alone. She remembered the early days with Lily, when the world felt too big and her shoulders felt too small to carry everything. The isolation Emily felt, cut off from support in a society that offered little to unmarried mothers, was heartbreaking. The biggest fear Emily expressed was her uncertainty about how she would raise her child by herself. "How will I feed this little one? How will I keep a roof over our heads?" she questioned, her words trembling on the page. "I have no husband to provide, no one to share the work. I am but a young woman, with little to offer but my love. Is that enough?" Her questions echoed Sarah's own worries about making ends meet, about giving Lily everything she deserved despite her limited resources. The struggle was different in its details, but the core fear of not being enough, of failing her child, was exactly the same. Emily's words painted a picture of deep despair. She imagined a future filled with struggle, gossip, and hardship. She worried about her child growing up without a father, about the whispers and pointing fingers. The burden of being a single mother in the 1940s was immense, far heavier than what Sarah faced in her own time. Yet the underlying emotions were painfully familiar. Sarah could almost hear Emily's silent cries, her fears echoing through the decades. It was a raw, honest outpouring of a young woman facing the biggest challenge of her life, with no one but her diary to confide in. Sarah felt a profound sadness for Emily, wishing she could reach back through time and offer comfort. The raw, honest words of Emily's despair, her fears of shame, loneliness, and the impossible task of raising a child alone, echoed so deeply within Sarah that she couldn't hold back any longer. A tear, hot and unexpected, traced a path down her cheek, followed quickly by another, and then another. Soon, Sarah was quietly weeping, the old diary clutched to her chest. It wasn't just sadness for Emily that brought the tears. It was the overwhelming feeling of being seen, truly understood, by a woman who lived so long ago. Emily's fears were Sarah's fears. Her loneliness was Sarah's loneliness. Her worries about providing for a child, about being enough, about facing the world without a partner. These were the very same burdens Sarah carried every single day. Sarah remembered the day she found out she was pregnant with Lily, and Lily's father had simply walked away. The shock, the hurt, the terror of facing it all alone. She remembered the sleepless nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering how she would manage. How would she pay for diapers? How would she work and take care of a baby? The whispers and judging glances from some people, even in modern times, had stung deeply. The heavy feeling of being on her own had settled in her bones and never truly left. Reading Emily's words was like looking into a mirror that stretched across 70 years. How will I feed this little one? How will I keep a roof over our heads? Emily had written, and Sarah had asked herself the exact same questions countless times. I am but a young woman, with little to offer but my love. Is that enough? Sarah had whispered that very question to herself, holding tiny Lily close, wondering if love alone could conquer all the practical worries. The tears fell freely, a release of all the pent-up emotions she usually kept locked away. It was a cry for Emily, for the harshness of her situation, but also a cry for herself, for the shared pain of single motherhood. The quiet empathy she felt for Emily was immense. Here, in the pages of an old book, was proof that she wasn't the first and wouldn't be the last to face such a daunting path. The diary wasn't just a story anymore. It was a testament, a shared whisper of strength and struggle between two women from different eras, united by the fierce, protective love for their children and the heavy weight of doing it all alone. Sarah pressed the diary closer, finding a strange comfort in the shared sorrow, a silent understanding that made her feel a little less isolated in her own world. Even as tears blurred her vision, Sarah kept reading, desperate to know what Emily did next. After pouring out her fears and despair, Emily's words began to shift, slowly but surely, towards a new, powerful feeling. Amidst her worry, a fierce, unwavering love for her unborn child shone through. "Despite all my fears, dear diary," Emily wrote, the smudged ink still visible, "there is a small light growing within me, a love I have never known, for this tiny life that stirs beneath my heart." Sarah felt a catch in her throat. She remembered that exact feeling, the first time she felt Lily kick. A sudden burst of pure, unconditional love that pushed all her fears into the background. Emily continued, describing how she would talk to her belly, whispering promises to her growing baby. "You will be loved, little one," she vowed on the page. "No matter what hardships come, you will know a mother's fierce devotion." She wrote about imagining her baby's tiny fingers, its soft skin, its innocent eyes. The thought of this child, her child, filled her with a strength she hadn't known she possessed. "I may be alone in this, but I will not let you be alone," Emily promised, her resolve shining through the tears on the page. "I will work tirelessly. I will face every judgment with my head held high. For you, I promise to be a good mother, the best mother I can be, come what may." It was a vow etched in ink, a declaration of a mother's eternal commitment. Sarah felt her own heart swell with emotion. This was the raw, undeniable truth of motherhood. That boundless love, that unwavering promise to protect and cherish, even when everything else felt like it was falling apart. It was a love that transcended hardship, societal norms, and even time itself. Emily's words, written in a different era with different struggles, spoke directly to Sarah's own experience as a single mother. Emily's decision to face her challenges with such courage, fueled by her love for her unborn child, was deeply inspiring. It reminded Sarah of her own strength, the hidden reserves she had found within herself when she became a mother. Emily was not just lamenting her fate, she was rising to meet it, empowered by the tiny life she carried. Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose, a shared understanding of that powerful, undeniable bond between a mother and her child. The tears still fell, but now they were mixed with a feeling of awe and a quiet sense of shared strength. The last words of Emily's vow, her promise to be a good mother no matter what, settled deep in Sarah's heart. A fresh wave of sadness washed over her, a poignant ache for the young woman who faced such a harsh path alone. Sarah imagined the whispers, the cold shoulders, the sheer difficulty of life for Emily in those days. It was a sadness for the past, for the unfairness of it all, and for the universal struggles of women. Yet, woven into that sadness, a different feeling began to bloom. It was a feeling of strength. Emily, despite her terror and loneliness, had chosen hope. She had chosen to face her future, not with despair, but with a fierce, protective love for her child. That choice, written in fading ink decades ago, resonated powerfully with Sarah. It was the same choice Sarah had made when she first held Lily, the same deep well of courage she had tapped into every day since. This wasn't just a story of hardship. It was a testament to resilience, Emily's unwavering commitment to her unborn baby, her promise to be the best mother I can be, was a beacon. It reminded Sarah that she too had that same strength. The burdens might be heavy, the path might be lonely, but the love for her child was a powerful engine that kept her moving forward. A quiet sense of hope began to push through Sarah's lingering tears. If Emily, in a much stricter and less forgiving time, could find the courage to face her situation and embrace motherhood, then Sarah could certainly face hers. Emily's story was a reminder that difficulties could be overcome, that love truly could conquer much. It wasn't about erasing the sadness of Emily's plight, but about finding inspiration in her enduring spirit. Sarah looked at the diary, no longer just a source of tears, but a silent companion, a voice from the past cheering her on. She felt a connection not just through shared pain, but through shared power. Emily had found her way, and Sarah would find hers too. The feeling was like a gentle hand on her shoulder, a whisper of encouragement across the years. The weight on her own heart felt a little lighter, replaced by a quiet, steady resolve. Clutching the diary, Sarah wiped away the last of her tears. The sadness for Emily's past still lingered, but it was now softened by a profound realization. She looked around her living room, then back down at the delicate pages in her hands. So much had changed between Emily's time and her own. The clothes were different, the cars, the way people spoke, even the rules of society. Emily faced much harsher judgment as an unmarried mother than Sarah ever had. Yet, at the very core, some things remained exactly the same. The most powerful of these unchanging truths, Sarah realized, was a mother's love. Emily's fierce devotion to her unborn child, her promise to protect and cherish, was a feeling Sarah knew intimately. It was the same overwhelming, unconditional love that filled her own heart for Lily. The fear of not being enough, the worry about providing, the quiet determination to overcome any obstacle for her child's well-being, these feelings were timeless. They stretched across decades, bridging the gap between Emily's world and Sarah's. Sarah thought about the struggles, the loneliness, the financial worries, the exhaustion. These were burdens Emily had carried, and Sarah carried them too. But the love, the joy in a child's smile, the strength found in protecting that tiny life, that was the constant. It was a golden thread running through the fabric of time, connecting every mother who had ever faced hardship for her children. "It never changes," Sarah whispered aloud, her voice a little hoarse. "A mother's love, it never, ever changes." This thought brought a deep sense of peace. In a world that often felt chaotic and isolating, this unchanging truth was a comfort. It meant that Emily, despite her solitary path, was never truly alone in her feelings. And Sarah, in her own struggles, was part of a long, unbroken line of strong mothers. The specific challenges might evolve, but the heart of motherhood, its powerful, selfless core, remained the same. The diary was more than just old words now. It was a testament to enduring love, a silent conversation between two women who, despite living in vastly different eras, shared the most important bond of all. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her, a quiet strength that came from this timeless understanding. It was a powerful reminder that she was part of something bigger, something eternal. The realization of a mother's timeless love had settled a quiet peace in Sarah's heart. But her journey through Emily's life was far from over. She still held her breath, turning the fragile pages with renewed urgency. Emily's last entry on page 47 had ended with a powerful promise. but it left Sarah wondering, what happened next? How did Emily, a single mother in a world far less forgiving than her own, manage to keep that promise? Sarah's mind raced with questions. Did Emily's family support her? Or did she face the harsh judgment she feared? How did she provide for her baby? Did she find work? Did she ever find love again, a true partner who would cherish her and her child? The possibilities, both hopeful and heartbreaking, swirled in Sarah's thoughts. She desperately hoped for a happy ending for Emily, a testament to her strength and love. With careful hands, Sarah turned past page 47. The following pages held more entries, though they weren't as frequent or as long as before. It was clear that Emily's life had become busier, perhaps harder, leaving her less time for her diary. But Sarah devoured every word, searching for clues, for signs of hope or despair. She scanned for dates, noticing that the entries continued for several years after Emily's big secret was revealed. This was a good sign, Sarah thought. It meant Emily had persevered, that she hadn't given up. The entries were now filled with a new kind of detail, mentions of the little one, of sleepless nights, and the immense joy a baby could bring. Sarah felt a strong pull to witness Emily's journey, to see how her story unfolded. It wasn't just idle curiosity. It was a need to understand, to see if Emily's courage had been rewarded. She hoped to find proof that a mother's love truly was enough. She hoped for moments of joy and triumph, not just hardship. Emily had become more than just a name in a book. She was a beacon, and Sarah needed to see her light shine. She needed to know that Emily and her baby had found happiness, somehow, against all odds. Sarah's heart beat a little faster as she turned the page, hoping for some good news after Emily's heartbreaking entry. And slowly, thankfully, the tone of the diary began to shift. The hurried, despairing handwriting gave way to a more steady, if still tired, script. The entries, though less frequent, started to contain glimmers of hope. Emily began to write about her neighbors. It wasn't immediate, and it wasn't easy. There was still the sting of gossip, the averted gazes. But then, small acts of kindness started to appear. Mrs. Gable brought over a pie today, one entry read. Said she just had extra apples. I know it was for me. For the baby? Sarah smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. Another entry mentioned Old Man Henderson fixing the gate without a word, a quiet gesture of support that spoke volumes. The biggest change came from a few women in the community, older women who remembered Emily as a child. Martha came today, Emily wrote, and offered to help with sewing baby clothes. She said a child is a blessing, no matter the circumstances. My heart felt lighter than it has in months. Sarah felt a lump in her throat, a wave of warmth spreading through her. These women, defying the harsh judgments of the time, chose compassion. Emily's entries started to reflect this newfound support. She wrote about neighbors leaving fresh vegetables on her porch, about a young boy offering to chop firewood, about quiet conversations where she felt understood, not judged. It wasn't a sudden fix for all her problems, but it was a lifeline. The feeling of being utterly alone began to lessen, replaced by a sense of being cared for, if only by a few kind souls. The world is not so cold as I feared, Emily wrote in one entry, a clear sigh of relief in her words. There are good hearts, even when shadows loom. My little one will not be without kindness. This realization, that even in the face of adversity, human goodness could prevail, brought a profound sense of comfort to Sarah. It showed that even when the path seemed impossible, help could appear in unexpected places. Sarah felt a surge of admiration for Emily, not just for her strength, but for her openness to receive help. It also reminded Sarah of the importance of community, of reaching out, and of the quiet power of a helping hand. The diary was no longer just a tale of sorrow. It was becoming a story of resilience and the unexpected kindness of strangers and friends. Sarah leaned forward, eager to read more, her hopes for Emily and her baby growing with each hopeful word. The kindness of Emily's neighbors had been a gentle rain after a long drought, and Sarah felt a profound relief reading those entries. But the true turning point in Emily's diary and in Sarah's heart came when Emily finally wrote about the arrival of her baby. The entries, though still short and often written late at night, now sparkled with a new kind of joy. "She is here, dear diary," Emily exclaimed in one entry, her handwriting full of wonder. "My little girl, born on a bright spring morning, her name is Rose." Sarah smiled, picturing tiny Rose, a little bloom in Emily's world. Emily went on to describe Rose's tiny hands, her soft cries, and the way she would grasp Emily's finger with surprising strength. Emily poured out her heart about the pure, overflowing joy that Rose brought into her life. "Every worry, every fear, seems to melt away when I look into her sweet face," she wrote. "Her smile is sunshine, her laughter is music. She makes even the hardest days feel blessed." Sarah felt a lump in her throat, remembering those exact feelings with Lily. The exhaustion, the constant demands, all faded in the face of a child's innocent happiness. Emily described the simple pleasures: Rose learning to crawl, her first wobbly steps, the way she'd babble nonsense words that sounded like poetry to Emily's ears. She wrote about holding Rose close, singing lullabies and watching her sleep, marveling at the miracle she had created. "She is everything," Emily penned, "my reason for everything. She fills this little house with so much light." Sarah's own memories of Lily's babyhood came flooding back, the first tooth, the first giggle, the way Lily would reach for her. A silent declaration of trust and love. Emily's words, so full of tenderness and awe, perfectly captured the magic of those early years. It was clear that despite the difficult circumstances, Rose was Emily's greatest treasure, a source of unending strength and happiness. The joy in Emily's writing was infectious. It erased the last lingering shadows of sadness Sarah had felt for her. Emily wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, her life enriched beyond measure by her daughter. The diary became a celebration of motherhood, a testament to the profound happiness a child brings, even in the most challenging situations. Sarah felt a deep warmth spread through her, a shared joy that spanned the decades. Emily's little girl, Rose, had indeed brought so much light into her world, and now, through her words, into Sarah's too. The joy radiating from Emily's entries about her daughter, Rose, filled Sarah with a profound sense of peace. The last vestiges of her own loneliness began to fade, replaced by a powerful and renewed sense of purpose. Reading about Emily's strength, her determination, and the deep happiness her child brought her, Sarah felt a wellspring of inner strength she hadn't realized was there. She thought about her own journey with Lily. The hard times, the sleepless nights, the constant worry about money. They hadn't disappeared. But now, looking at them through Emily's story, they seemed less overwhelming. Emily had faced similar, even greater challenges, and had not only survived, but found deep joy. This realization was like a warm hand taking hers, a silent whisper that said, "You can do this too." Sarah felt a surge of energy, a fresh resolve to tackle her own life with renewed vigor. The feeling of being on her own that had weighed so heavily on her heart began to lift. She wasn't truly alone. She was connected to Emily, to all the mothers throughout history who had faced similar struggles and found strength in their love for their children. It was a shared journey, a timeless sisterhood of motherhood. This newfound understanding made Sarah feel like a part of something bigger, a long, unbroken chain of brave women. Emily's story was not just a historical account, it was a living testament, a guide that showed her the path forward. It reminded Sarah that the love for Lily was her greatest strength, her most powerful tool against hardship. A quiet confidence settled in Sarah's heart. She looked at her phone, at the picture of Lily on the screen, and a bright smile touched her lips. She could do this. She would do this. Emily's courage, her unwavering spirit, had passed through the pages of the diary and into Sarah's own soul. The burden of loneliness that had once felt so heavy now seemed lighter, replaced by a comforting sense of belonging and a strong, clear purpose. She knew she wasn't alone in her journey, not truly. Emily's words had proven that. With a heart full of renewed purpose, Sarah gently closed the leather-bound diary. The last entry was a simple one, a few lines about Rose's latest antics and a quiet thank you for the day's blessings. Emily's story had come to an end within these pages, but its impact on Sarah was just beginning. She held the book carefully, feeling its weight, not just of age, but of wisdom and shared human experience. This wasn't just an old book she'd found in a dusty corner. It was a treasure, a lifeline, a mirror reflecting her own unspoken feelings and fears, then showing her a path of strength and hope. Emily, through her words, had given Sarah a profound gift. It was the gift of knowing she wasn't alone, the gift of seeing courage triumph over despair, and the gift of understanding the timeless power of a mother's love. Sarah knew she couldn't just put it back in the basement box. This diary deserved a place of honor, a safe haven where its story could continue to inspire. She decided to keep it in her bedroom, perhaps on her bedside table, a constant reminder of Emily's journey and her own. She would protect it, just as she protected Lily, ensuring its delicate pages wouldn't crumble or fade away. She imagined Lily, years from now, perhaps finding the diary herself. What would Lily think? Would she feel the same connection, the same sense of wonder and strength? Sarah hoped so. It was a legacy, a whisper from the past, that she now felt responsible for safeguarding. The diary felt like a bridge, not just between Emily and herself, but potentially between generations of women in this very house. Sarah carefully wrapped the diary in a soft cloth, a gesture of reverence. It wasn't just paper and ink. It was a piece of history, a personal story that had unexpectedly become a part of her own. She felt a deep sense of gratitude towards Emily, a woman she had never met, yet who felt like a dear friend. Emily had shared her deepest secrets, her greatest joys, and in doing so, had given Sarah the courage she needed. It was a special gift indeed, one that Sarah would cherish always. With the diary carefully wrapped and placed on her bedside table, Sarah's thoughts turned to her own daughter. Lily would be home soon, bubbling with stories from her friend's house. Sarah walked over to the living room window, a soft smile gracing her lips. The rain had stopped, and a faint rainbow arced across the sky, a colorful promise after the storm. She pulled out her phone and looked at the lock screen picture. Lily, with her bright, mischievous eyes and a gap-toothed grin. A fresh wave of love, deeper and richer than before, washed over Sarah. It wasn't just the familiar maternal affection. It was a love now layered with understanding, resilience, and a profound sense of connection to a timeless legacy. Before reading Emily's diary, Sarah's love for Lily was often shadowed by worry, by the heavy weight of providing and protecting alone. But now, she saw it differently. Emily's words, her fears, her triumphs, and especially her pure joy in her daughter Rose, had shone a new light on Sarah's own experience. She realized that the challenges she faced, the moments of doubt and exhaustion, were simply part of the beautiful, powerful journey of motherhood. Sarah felt a deeper bond with Lily, knowing that their connection was part of something ancient and enduring. It wasn't just a bond between mother and daughter in the present. It was a bond that stretched back through Emily and countless other mothers before her. Every lullaby sung, every scraped knee kissed, every quiet moment of watching her child sleep. These were echoes of generations of mothers. The loneliness that had clung to Sarah for so long had finally dissipated. She wasn't alone. She had Lily, of course, her precious daughter who was the center of her universe. But she also had Emily, a silent sister across time, who had shared her strength and her story. And in that shared story, Sarah found a renewed sense of pride in her role as a single mother. It wasn't a burden. It was a testament to her own unwavering love and strength. She couldn't wait for Lily to come home, to hug her a little tighter, to look into her eyes with this new, profound understanding. The house still creaked, and the bills were still on the counter, but Sarah felt a lightness in her step, a warmth in her heart. She was ready to face whatever came next, not just for Lily, but with the quiet strength of all the mothers who had come before her, whispering encouragement through the years. The deep bond Sarah now felt with Lily, strengthened by Emily's story, filled her with a new kind of quiet courage. The old diary, resting safely in her room, had become more than just a book. It was a testament to enduring strength, a silent mentor. It helped Sarah feel brave and truly ready to face her own challenges, just as Emily had done so many years ago. Before finding the diary, Sarah often felt like she was simply trying to keep her head above water, battling each day's problems with a weary heart. But Emily's journey, from despair to finding joy and purpose through her daughter, was a powerful lesson. Emily had faced a world that was far less accepting, with fewer resources, and yet she had persevered, driven by a love that transcended all obstacles. Sarah now looked at her own life's hurdles, the tight budget, the long hours, the moments of exhaustion, not as insurmountable mountains, but as steps on a path she was strong enough to walk. Emily's story had taught her that even when a situation seemed impossible, there was always a way forward, fueled by the fierce love for her child. If Emily could mend clothes, grow food, and raise a happy daughter with little more than her own two hands and the kindness of a few neighbors, then Sarah, with all the advantages of modern times, could certainly find her own solutions. The diary had given Sarah a new perspective. It wasn't about avoiding hardships, but about finding the strength within to meet them head-on. It was about embracing the joy of motherhood, even amidst the chaos, and trusting in her own capabilities. Emily's words had whispered encouragement across the decades, a powerful affirmation that a mother's love truly was enough. As Lily burst through the front door, her laughter echoing through the house, Sarah smiled, a genuine, joyful smile that reached her eyes. "Mommy, guess what?" Lily exclaimed, running towards her, arms outstretched. Sarah knelt down, wrapping her daughter in a tight hug. She felt a lightness, a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The house still had its creaks and groans, but they no longer sounded sad. They sounded like whispers of history, of lives lived and loved within these walls. Sarah knew that tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but she also knew she would meet them with a brave heart, just like Emily. The diary had shown her the way, a timeless story of a mother's unbreakable spirit, a spirit that now lived within Sarah too. She was ready.